He didn't say it loudly. He said it the way men say the things they've been holding for years. Quietly, with his face turned slightly away, his jaw tight, his voice just barely holding together. "I'm done fighting this battle alone." His wife sat there in silence. Not because she didn't understand, but because she finally did. This is the moment most men never reach. The moment they stop pretending. The moment the exhaustion of carrying a secret becomes heavier than the shame of letting someone else see it. And the secret this man had been carrying for years was one of the most common, most devastating, and most misunderstood health conditions affecting men over 50. Erectile dysfunction. Not just a bedroom problem. Not just an inconvenience. But a signal. A message. A warning that the body has been sending for years, and that most men have been trained culturally and medically to ignore. What you're about to hear is not a quick fix. It is not a sales pitch. It is a conversation about what is actually happening inside the male body when this condition appears, and why the answers go much deeper than most men and most doctors are willing to look. Let's begin where the body begins. Every time a man experiences a normal erection, something remarkable is happening at the level of the blood vessels. The inner lining of your arteries, a thin layer called the endothelium, releases a molecule called nitric oxide. This molecule is essentially a chemical instruction to the smooth muscle tissue surrounding the penile arteries. The instruction is relax. When those muscles relax, the arteries widen. Blood flows in, pressure builds, and the result is an erection that is physiologically healthy and neurologically appropriate. This process sounds simple, but it depends on an extraordinary chain of events, and that chain has many points of failure. The endothelium, that delicate lining, needs to be healthy to produce nitric oxide efficiently. And the endothelium is one of the first tissues in the body to be damaged by the same factors that drive heart disease: type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, chronic inflammation, and elevated cortisol. In other words, erectile dysfunction is not a local problem. It is a systemic problem wearing a local face. When a man in his 50s or 60s begins to notice changes in his erectile function, the body is not simply aging. The body is reporting accumulated damage to the vascular system. It is communicating, in the clearest biological language available, that something upstream has gone wrong. Cardiologists have known this for decades. Some refer to erectile dysfunction as the canary in the coal mine for cardiovascular disease, because the small arteries that supply the erectile tissue are often the first to show the microscopic damage that will later appear in the coronary arteries of the heart. The man who cried to his wife that night was not broken. His body was communicating, and no one had ever taught him how to listen. If you are finding this useful, leave a comment below right now with the word strong. It is a signal that this kind of honest, evidence-informed conversation matters to you. You are not alone in this. Now let's talk about the mistakes. Because most men who deal with this condition spend years making them, not out of stupidity, but out of the guidance they've been given, or the guidance they've never received at all. The first mistake is suffering in silence. This one is almost universal among men of a certain generation. The culture they grew up in told them that health struggles, particularly those related to sexual function, were to be endured privately. That asking for help was weakness. That admitting difficulty was emasculating. So they say nothing. To their doctors, to their partners, to their friends. They minimize. They avoid intimacy. They create distance where closeness used to live. And the silence compounds the damage. Not just physically, but neurologically and hormonally. Chronic psychological stress, including the particular stress of carrying sexual shame in secret, has measurable effects on cortisol levels, and cortisol is one of the primary antagonists of testosterone and nitric oxide production. The man fighting alone is not just emotionally depleted. He is hormonally depleted. His silence is not neutral. It is making the problem worse. The second mistake is accepting that decline is inevitable. Aging does affect vascular elasticity and hormonal output. That is true. But the rate of that decline, and whether it becomes clinically significant, is enormously influenced by factors that are modifiable. The man who believes there is nothing to be done stops looking for what can be done. And there is quite a lot that can be done. The body has a remarkable capacity for vascular repair when given the right inputs. Endothelial function can be improved. Nitric oxide production can be supported. Hormonal balance can be optimized. These are not speculative claims. These are physiological facts that are studied, documented, and, frankly, underutilized in clinical practice. The third mistake is treating the symptom instead of the source. Phosphodiesterase type 5 inhibitors, the class of medication that includes the most commonly prescribed drugs for this condition, work by increasing blood flow to the erectile tissue. For many men, they are useful. For some men, they are essential. But they do not address endothelial damage. They do not reverse vascular inflammation. They do not restore hormonal balance. They are, in the most precise sense of the word, a bridge. And a bridge is only useful if you are also working on the road. When a man takes a pill and considers the problem managed, he has stopped the conversation his body was trying to have with him. The fourth mistake is ignoring the systemic picture. A man whose erectile function is declining almost always has other signals showing up at the same time. His energy is lower. His morning erections, which are a reliable indicator of vascular and hormonal health during sleep, have become infrequent or absent. His waistline has expanded, particularly in the abdominal region, which is a direct marker of hormonal imbalance and insulin resistance. His sleep quality has deteriorated. His recovery after physical exertion takes longer than it used to. These are not separate problems. They are the same problem viewed from different angles. The man who addresses only the erection and ignores the rest of this picture is like a driver who keeps replacing the warning light instead of checking the engine. If you know someone who is fighting this battle in silence, share this video right now. This conversation has the potential to change a life. There is no shame in that. Now let's talk about what can be done. Not miracle claims, not promises, but a clear, physiologically grounded picture of the inputs that support vascular health, hormonal balance, and nitric oxide production in men over 50. The first pillar is circulation. The endothelium responds to two things above everything else: physical demand and nutritional support. Regular cardiovascular exercise, particularly the kind that elevates heart rate and sustains it, stimulates nitric oxide production directly. The body treats physical exertion as a signal that the arteries need to perform at a higher level, and it responds by upregulating the very enzymes that produce nitric oxide. This does not require extreme training. Consistent, progressive cardiovascular effort, sustained over weeks and months, produces measurable changes in endothelial function. The second pillar is the nutritional environment for nitric oxide. Several foods contain compounds that the body uses to synthesize nitric oxide. Leafy green vegetables, particularly those rich in dietary nitrates such as spinach, arugula, and beet greens, provide raw material that the body converts through a well-documented biochemical pathway. Foods rich in the amino acid L-arginine, including various nuts and seeds, contribute similarly. Pomegranate, with its polyphenol content, has been studied for its effects on endothelial health. Dark chocolate with high cacao content provides flavonoids that support nitric oxide synthase activity. These are not exotic interventions. They are foods, and their effect is not pharmacological, it is physiological. They give the body what it needs to do what it already knows how to do. The third pillar is reducing what disrupts production. Alcohol, even in moderate amounts, suppresses testosterone and impairs endothelial function. Ultra-processed foods drive systemic inflammation, which directly attacks the endothelium. Excess body fat, particularly visceral fat around the abdomen, converts testosterone into estrogen through a process called aromatization, lowering the hormonal signal that supports libido and erectile function. And, critically, poor sleep reduces the nocturnal testosterone surge that is supposed to happen during deep sleep cycles. Addressing these factors does not require perfection. It requires a pattern, a consistent reduction in the inputs that damage the system and a consistent increase in the inputs that restore it. The fourth pillar is the hormonal environment. Testosterone is not the sole driver of erectile function, but it is a critical component of libido, energy, vascular tone, and recovery. Zinc, found in pumpkin seeds and certain shellfish, is an essential cofactor for testosterone synthesis. Vitamin D, produced by skin exposure to sunlight and found in specific dietary sources, plays a regulatory role in testosterone production. Magnesium, widely deficient in modern diets, is involved in hundreds of enzymatic processes, including those relevant to hormonal balance. Again, these are not replacements for clinical evaluation. If a man's testosterone is clinically low, that is a medical question to be addressed with a physician. But supporting the body's natural production through nutritional adequacy is a step that belongs to every man, regardless of where his levels currently sit. The fifth pillar is the psychological environment. The man who opened this story was not just managing a physiological condition. He was carrying a psychological weight that was actively interfering with his recovery. Stress, shame, performance anxiety, and relational disconnection all activate the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight response, which is directly antagonistic to the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest response, that is required for healthy erectile function. No amount of dietary optimization will fully overcome a nervous system that is chronically in a state of threat. The conversation he finally had with his wife that night was not just emotional release. It was a physiological shift. It was the beginning of a hormonal and neurological environment that could actually support healing. The man who said he was done fighting alone did not give up that night. He surrendered the wrong battle. He stopped fighting to hide. He started fighting to heal. And he stopped doing it by himself. That is not weakness. That is precisely what the science would recommend. The vascular system responds to reduced stress. The hormonal system responds to restored sleep and connection. The endothelium responds to the nutritional and physical inputs that tell it the body is worth maintaining. None of this happens overnight. None of this has a single solution. But all of it is available to every man who decides to stop managing the symptom and start listening to the signal. Your body has been trying to tell you something. The question is whether you're ready to hear it. Subscribe right now and hit the bell icon so you don't miss what's coming next. Next week we go inside what your blood work is already telling you about your vascular age and your hormonal status, and why most men over 50 are looking at completely the wrong numbers. That video could change the conversation you have with your doctor.